Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Game Changer. I'm Maryam Zia. As millions of Americans are heading to the polls to decide who will hold the world's most powerful of office, of course, all the world's eyes are on America. We are, of course, witnessing it from Pakistan because the consequences of the outcome of these elections will not be significant not only for US but for global politics, global economies as well. Of course, we know that the tie and the race is head to head and head between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. This election is significant for Americans because many of the Americans are claiming and they are thinking from both sides that American way of life is at stake. In today's program, we will be looking at the significance of these elections, what it means for America, what it means for the world, and of course, how this election will be unfolding as the election results will be coming out. And of course, we will be talking about Electoral College, which is pretty much different and interesting when we talk about US politics. We will try to break down for our viewers that as well. To discuss this and more, we are joined in the studios by Mr. Sheharyar Khan, who is analyst. Welcome to the program. We're also joined online by Mr. Baluch, who is former ambassador. Welcome to the program. And we're joined online by Mr. Amir Hussain Nihal, who is an expert in international affairs. Welcome to the program. Let me start with you, Mr. Baluch. Of course, when we look at US politics, this is very interesting. Can you explain why US election is decided by Electoral College rather than popular vote, and how this how it overall impacts the election outcomes?
Yeah, I think this is one of the most intriguing and most interesting aspect of the electoral system of the US, that despite several cases where a candidate won the popular vote, yet the Electoral College voted for the other candidate. And I think what one learned from the literature as to how US democracy evolved, the basic concept was that since there were different sizes of the state, so if they have gone only for election through one man or one woman, one vote, then perhaps the smaller states might have not had the requisite weightage in the election of the president. Since president is elected by the not popular vote through the Electoral College, contrary to what we have in the parliamentary system, the British model, where we elect, where the president is elected through the two houses of the parliament, whether the Senate and the National Assembly, or whatever name it is. So I think the problem with this system is that in theory, it's excellent idea to give representation to the smaller states. But when it comes to actual practice and kind of distortions that have occurred in the democratic process of the US, there is this mismatch, what the popular will is and what that Electoral College of 360 or 370 people decide. That being the case, I think, and there have been actually a lot of writings, a lot of debate whether this Electoral College system needs a revisit by the legislators, the U.S. legislators.
Right.
I think
especially after
today
2020 and 2016. Of course, that is very important. But Mr. Amir, when we look at this situation, of course, swing states, we know this time around, especially 7 swing states, have been important, and they are the key battlegrounds which are going to be deciding the outcome of these elections. Can you elaborate what kind of outcome are we expecting from these swing states, especially when we talk about Pennsylvania, Arizona?
Thank you very much. I think this time we see, the changing trends in the last couple of hours, we see the polling trends are changing more towards Republicans in some of the areas. I think the question now is all about who is going to create a lot of lot of optimism, because we see that Donald Trump is out there, and he has cast his vote as well, and he's trying to get out to the people, despite the fact that in these states, in the last time we have seen in particular Pennsylvania and Arizona, the blue, these were called blue state once, and then in 2016 we have seen a different trend in the voting. But I think overall, if you look at these so-called swing states, I think it is very difficult to predict something right now, because the competition is very tough this time. Most likely, it happens that when, in particular in Pennsylvania and the Carolina, in these two states, we have mostly immigrants who can make much difference. Even last elections, in the last few elections, many presidents have won in these states just a margin of 10,000 votes. So I think it will count a lot this time as well. It is always, if you look at the analysis that is coming out from different international media channels, the prediction is very much there that this time perhaps the Kamala Harris will have an upper hand, in particular on particular issues on immigration, and also the women rights, the transgender issues, and all that. So we have to wait and see. But I think as far as the mood is building, as we have seen, the people are coming to vote, and having their opinions on this polls. They are saying that we were going to defend our civil liberties. The civil liberties comes with lot of optimism with democratic candidates. I think that's my reading.
Of course, that remains an important aspect. But Sheharyar, when we look at these 7 swing states, there is a lot of time difference as well. How do you factor in that when we look at the election closing time, opening time, and then the election projections that the media is going to be portraying that are going to be creating some kind of chaos? Do you see happening in coming hours or days?
So Maryam, when it comes to media projections, generally it happens that various media firms are like standing behind certain candidates.
Very clearly.
Very clearly, and the lines are drawn. And this this election is like very divisive. So it can happen that like one media group can basically stand behind one candidate and basically start saying that they're like leading in the race, and that can create some sort of like people coming out, like voting more, or getting disappointed and not coming out at all. So yes, the media and their projections, and especially media also is like one outlet where they have this opportunity of also conducting exit polls. But when we saw the last time when President Trump basically took office, at that time 80 to 90% of the exit polls did not come out to be true. So the whole idea of like having exit polls again can be very misleading, and that can dissuade the voter or encourage the voter in this case as well. So yes, because when the competition is this tough and when the race is like so narrow, media would definitely play a very important role.
And the time difference, Sheharyar, between many states is huge. How do you think that is going to be influencing the voters that are going to be coming out, especially when we talk about these 7 so-called swing states?
So Maryam, like obviously the voters, because this time around the election is so polarized, I think the turnout would be very huge, whether it's the Democratic voters or the Republican voters. The key elements that would come into play is the demographics of these states. And as we know that these states are also divided into the sun and the rust belts. So these two divisions also come with particular demographics. So for example, Arizona and Georgia, they're called as the Sun Belts, and Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan, they're known as the Rust Belts. And in both of these divisions, what we basically see is that the demographics in the Sun Belt, they comprise mostly of Hispanic voters, they comprise mostly of young voters and black voters. And these are the voters that, and these are the states that basically have swung on either side to Republicans or Democrats in particular times.
Right.
When it comes to like the Rust Belt, that has more of an industrial background. They have like white voters, young voters, and they also have a very large Arab and Muslim population as well. So we have to like see that these 7 swing states, which candidate will they be supporting. So that would be more on economic terms. It will also be on geopolitical terms, especially on the Rust Belt, and due to economic provisions that both candidates have promised. But again, it will be razor thin, and to basically predict on who would basically win right now would be anybody's guess.
Right. And Mr. Amir, when we talk about the issues, in your opinion, what are the main issues in which voter sentiment are taking them to incline towards either of the candidates, especially when we talk about healthcare, gun rights? How do you think how much of that is a factor when voters are going to be coming out today?
Well, if you look at the landscape of American political segments and groups across the country, the white middle classes are more tilted towards what President Trump is saying, in particular about the immigration, and he's trying to bring in the debate that the jobs are being snatched by the immigrants, so that he wants to secure the white jobs for the middle classes. But on the other hand, if you look at Kamala Harris, she's more into the human rights, but also she's trying to give a great kind of attention towards the jobs protection of those who have been settled in America for a long time, but also investment in the small and the medium businesses, and protection of middle class incomes, reducing the taxes and all that, and entrepreneurship type of investments she is promising, which is also an important dimension for the people, because they have seen a huge economic burden in the last few years. In particular, we have seen the complete indecision in the last year of the Democratic government, the outgoing government. I think that is something which creates a lot of confusion among the voters. However, because people think that the outgoing president was not charismatic, was not holding to the economic promises he made, but they have some hope with Kamala Harris, because she is very assertive and she has been able to articulate her her proposals, her manifesto in a better way. And I think this is going to be a competition between human rights, immigrant issues, transgender issues, and the middle classes of the white, who are mostly tilted towards the Donald Trump's the repeated slogans of protecting the white middle classes. I think again, if you look at the whole scenario, there are pet states for both Republicans and Democrats. So there's not going to be much change. Then the question again comes to these swing states, where we have immigrants, we have black communities, we have Muslims, we have other Latinos and the Hispanic communities living there. So it boils down to their choices now. Most of these Latinos and most of these immigrants, they are more, I see that they have been traditionally with the Democrats. So this time again, it looks like that some of these decisions of the voters at the time of when they go into the voting, because the media is creating a lot of fuss now. Media is the media houses from both presidential can.
Of course, the projections of media remains an important aspect of these elections as well. But Mr. G.R. Baluch, when we look at these elections, of course, we know that both candidates are saying that this is one of the most consequential and significant elections for both the candidates. How do you see both candidates have campaigned, and do you see it translating into voter turnout that they have expected?
There is a interesting aspect of this campaign because just after losing his second bid for the White House, kind of suggested and he proposed himself to be the candidate, and he said, "Why not?" And we saw it that he squarely won the nomination of Republican Party. There was simply nobody who could contest him or face him, given his very assertive and his kind of media campaign, his aura of that he had created around his personality, and those devout voters, pro-Trump voters, also even kind of saw him as a charismatic leader. So I think he was an uncontested nominee of the Republicans. While we see that Joe Biden was a reluctant nominee of the Democrats, because the Democrats did not pick up the courage to bring a new face Trump. So it was again by default that Kamala Harris, just few months before the election, was nominated, since Joe Biden's performance in the first and the only presidential debate that was held could not perform well, and he came up very weak, obviously not intellectually, but more physically, and to some extent some cognitive problems, which kind of were obvious that he was not able to articulate the issues. So I think there is a mismatch between the campaign process. Also, that Trump has the power of the traditional media houses, including now X or the Twitter, Elon Musk, and the money. So I think he has big money behind him. Although in the popular fundraising, Kamala Harris, I think in the first day of her, I think $500 million was contributed to her fund. But still, I think the corporate sector, the white voters, I think they have a kind of devoted their vote to Mr. Trump. So he will give it. But I think the elections will be decided by undecided voters. And they are likely to vote on issues which impact their lives, like the geostrategic, geopolitical, and those big issues. The jobs, the economy, housing, health, and of course, women's rights, and especially the abortion. I mean, these are people who are kind of liberal in their approach. So they'll try to vote for Kamala Harris. And also, mind you, I think there's some people who want to break this, glass ceiling of having a women president, the first women president after 100 plus years of democracy. My God, why not? When Pakistan can have a prime minister.
Harris has been downplaying that side when we look at her campaign strategy, the gender side of it.
Yeah, you're right. That was in a strategy, but there were undertones. Obviously, she herself cannot say it, but I think the undertones were there. There are different channels that they actually run a very sophisticated campaign. Imagine billions of dollars are spent. So there are people who write opinion pages, there are people who write opinion pages over opinion pages, but definitely there was a messaging and there is a kind of a consciousness. In fact, I was listening to some voter just an hour ago, and they were young girls. They said, why not? She does symbolize empowerment of women. So they were kind of, they were being interviewed by. So I think there is this sentiment among the women. So I think 50% of the votes are women, obviously, in America. And she has an advantage over Trump, because Trump has been using very, very abusive language, and his approach to women generally has
Misogynist,
not been
I would probably
taken
say.
very kindly. Yeah, yeah,
Right.
Maria.
Thank you very much, Mr. G.R. Baluch, former ambassador, for joining us in today's program and for your valuable input. Sheharyar, coming back to you, of course, when we look at the campaign strategies, we also know that, of course, former President Donald Trump has raised a lot of questions when it comes to legitimacy of these elections in case Trump does not go to the White Office. What's your take on this, and how do you think this is going to be impacting the voter turnout?
So Maryam, like when it comes to media perceptions, when it comes to riling up voters or like mobilizing them, both candidates basically use such ways to like encourage their voters to come out and vote in large numbers. Historically, there has been a bad taste when it came to the last election, when a lot of like Trump supporters basically came and basically
Attacked
attacked
Capitol
the
Hill.
Capitol Hill, and that has left a very bitter taste in the American public. So this time around, there are like a lot of like security measures taking place, and all like key buildings in Washington will be locked. Other than that, there are also like security measures which are being taking place when it comes to cyber security, when it comes to controlling social media or monitoring social media, or when it comes to securing the Washington DC and like important establishments in that area. So I think like when it comes to security measures, I think most of the US
And also, we
security.
cannot forget the cyber aspect, cyber security aspect of it. How do you see the handling of FBI and other agencies about the threats that they are claiming are coming from foreign actors? Like they are, of course, saying Russia might be involved in it. How do you see that factoring in when the voters are going out for their ballot today?
So Maryam, this time around as well, there have been accusations on the Russian side that they basically might be using social media to influence voter behavior and voter patterns. But since the last elections, when this whole meddling by Russians came into the light, I think there has been a lot of like crackdown, or I would say a lot of like regulations that are basically controlling social media websites like Facebook, Twitter, and like all of these platforms. So I think this time around the impact of meddling through social media will not be as much, but obviously every country has a stake in this election, because obviously whoever comes into the White House and the policies that they basically make will have a rippling impact on the global economy. So every stakeholder within the US or outside the US has an interest in the way these elections would be playing out. But I don't think that would have a major impact when it comes to media or social media.
Right, and since you alluded to economy, how do you see the visions of both candidates when it comes to, of course, economies, economic outlook, not only of America, but of trade relations, economic ties with other countries and its impact on other countries, especially in this region and on Pakistan?
So, Maryam, when it comes to both candidates, I think if there is a Harris administration in a few months, then we would see more of the same, and we will probably be going with the status quo, which would basically be focusing more on multilateralism. It would be focusing more on building regional and global alliances. There would be a lot of work on climate change, adaptation, mitigation, and obviously a lot of like discussion on freedom of speech, human rights, and when it comes to global security, I think there would be a lot of support going on to Ukraine to counter the Russian side. When it comes to Trump administration in a few months, that would more be focusing on the rhetoric that Trump has basically come up with, which is America first. So it would be more of an economy which would be inward looking. And in various speeches, President Trump or former President Trump has basically alluded to the fact that as soon as he comes to the office, he will be basically taking the US out of these global conflicts, and he would try his best to solve them. When it comes to China, President Trump is very clear that there would be a lot of tariffs which would greatly impact the international trade relations globally. So he is planning on putting on a lot of tariffs to block Chinese imports into the US. Other than that,
Right.
yeah, so other than that, he is more focused on building the US from the inside. But when it comes to, I think, the Middle East, I think it doesn't matter which president comes into office. I think that policy will continue.
It would be a bipartisan support for
Definitely.
Middle East, as far as Middle East is concerned. But Mr. Amir Hussain, coming back to election itself, of course, there is the number, the prize number of 270 electoral votes. Can you outline for us the significance of 270 electoral votes and threshold for winning US candidacy?
Yeah, because this time again, despite the tough competition, the only age one can have as president is achieving that magic figure of 270 Electoral College votes. I think that is a significant thing, and it is decided upon a very minor difference within the voting system. And we have seen in the last couple of elections, most of the elections in particular, where the candidates with neck-to-neck competition were able to win over in some of these states by 10,000 margin, 20,000 votes margin. So I think this is going to be a significant movement again this time as well. But if you look at the internal dynamics again, we can see that the popular aspiration, the popular votes do not matter much. In particular, when we talk about the strategic victory rests with the electoral colleges, which will be determining factor, of course, this time as well. And it also draws upon the fact that the American political system has a strange, logic for the winners, and this logic will again come to play. And I think this is going to be an important thing. Yeah.
Right. And Mr. Amir, how do you see the recent fluctuations in US market is going to be determining or influencing the outcome of these elections?
Absolutely, yeah, because there is a unpredictable economic indicators we have seen in the last particular 6 months to 1 year time. The inflation has gone up a bit, and the American engagement in international politics has also created a lot of burden on the taxpayers' money, in particular in the Middle East and in the with Russia in the Ukraine, and also trying to the United States is too much is kind of overstretched now in political terms. And this has created an additional burden for the taxpayers. So taxpayers are feeling overburdened, one thing. Secondly, we have not, because when Democrats were coming in the last election, they had three major promises. One was, a cut on taxes. Number second was improving the social security for the poor. Third was to, fighting against the monopoly of insurance companies on health in the health sector. But none of this has happened so far. The insurance companies have the monopoly over the health system, and we haven't seen any improvement in educational spending, and the credit culture has increased in the last 1 or 2 years. So I think this is a very bad shape that economy has seen, and that's why the only confusion right now is whether the American voter will go for Trump or Harris, because Harris.
Right. And let me take the same question to the studios to Sheharyar. Sheharyar, what role financial markets are going to be playing this time around and influencing the election results, especially when there is so much a close tie between both the candidates?
So Maryam, when it comes to the financial markets, they basically are affected when there is like political uncertainty, and that's like a phenomena that is like global. So if there is a race that is being very clear and one candidate is like getting a clear majority, then the markets obviously will be very stable. But as soon as the uncertainty keeps on rising, then the markets are supposed to fluctuate. A strong dollar would basically point towards a market that is like confident.
But we are witnessing a fluctuation in the US
Yeah,
markets. Of course, maybe
yeah.
because of Trump's, because there is a lot of anticipation in Europe, EU regarding Trump's policy in regards to NATO as well. And also his businesses and of course his media houses, the way they are projecting of course this election. How do you see this is going to be impacting voters and of course the financial markets play into the outcomes of the elections?
So Maryam, this can generally go both ways. So if you look at it from institutional investors, they basically hold back their investments unless or until the whole situation, electoral situation is clear. But if we look at it from the EU side, obviously a lot of like investors over there would be reluctant or very careful in investing, and they would like hold back their finances because they want to like see who comes into office. But again, like let's assume it's a Trump presidency, then I think like the internal like shares and stocks of like local organizations or local corporations would obviously go up, because a lot of like investors would basically feel that
but when
Trump
we talk about
presidency
clarity of the situation historically, when we look at US elections, of course there have been instances when the election outcome was announced the same night. There have been instances when it took a few days and of course a few months as well. How do you see this of course playing out this time around? And do you see any of the candidates conceding early on?
I don't think any of the candidates will be conceding unless or until one candidate gets a very clear majority. But obviously when it comes to exit polls, when it comes to the whole forecasting right now, and we also need to keep in mind that 70 million votes have already been casted. So the whole margins are very razor thin right now. So I don't expect any of the candidates to basically bow out before the whole counting has been done. But again, if the margins are razor thin, then we can expect that any of the candidates would ask for a recount. So I think right now we'll have to wait and see how the day goes in the US, and whether one
and the timelines are of course we know pretty much huge. And Mr. Amir, what does the timelines look like when we look at for the election certification, especially when we see challenges and delays in election, especially in the swing states?
Well, I think it will take, to my understanding, a week time to know the exact outcomes for everything that is going on. Because number one, the competition is tough. Number second, as you know that President Trump has this tendency, as in the past, he may go far, protest if somewhere he loses in one of the swing states. So it is again, if some people would say that President Trump and his supporters will never let it go, and this may create some sort of trouble. And that's why the American security agencies are now alert on the major installation and the buildings and trying to ensure that nothing of this sort happens. If it happens, even it doesn't disrupt the public order. I think this, to my understanding, this time is going to take a week at least to know the exact outcome and to see who is going to be the president.
And lastly, Mr. Amir, what global repercussions look like if either of the candidates win?
Well, I think as global policy is concerned, the American economic policy doesn't change much with the incoming of a new president. The global corporate interest is much there. The American geopolitical interests are there, from the Middle East to Far East Asia to South Asia, and every region that American presence is part of their larger economic and the global hegemonic policy. So I think nothing much we will see, not much changes. But one thing is for sure that whoever will come in the American economy is in a bad shape, and they will also focus on internal economic stability as well. But the global engagement will remain the same.
Right, and Sheharyar, last few words. What global repercussions do you see for, of course, conflicts and economies if either of the candidates comes into White House?
So I think the status quo will remain. If there's a Harris administration, there will be more focus on multilateralism. There will be a lot of like alliances coming up. Alliances focus of the US would obviously be on the South China Sea, more towards the national security policy that's like more tailored towards Southeast Asia and curtailing the rise of China. Other than that, if there's a Harris administration, obviously more support to Ukraine, more support towards the issue of climate change. Again, with the Trump administration, more inward-looking presidency and more China-focused in terms of curtailing China's rise through tariffs and basically blocking China's products from coming into the US market. Other than that, obviously both candidates will also have to look at the internal economic and social fissures that are there in the US society, and both will be working towards ratifying that in their own policies.
Right, and lastly, Mr. Amir, with this polarized society, polarized elections, and of course both candidates claiming this to be one of the most significant elections of their lifetimes, and Americans are of course considering this significant for their lifetimes as well, because they are considering that American way of life, American democracy is at stake from both sides. How do you see what's your guess, who is going to be the next president of the US?
Well, I think we have seen in the last couple of years how the president, Trump has conducted himself as in political sphere. He has not been very much in line with the American overall, political culture and the establishment. The Pentagon has its own, agenda. So I think this time, if they want to maintain the status quo, if they want to see the things in business as usual, I think the tilt of the American establishment, the tilt of the American democratic forces would be more towards Kamala Harris, and to me, she has an edge over Donald Trump.
Right. Thank you very much, Mr. Amir, Hussain, Nihal, for joining us in today's program. Thank you very much, Mr. Sheharyar Khan, for joining us in today's program. As Americans are, of course, coming out to cast their votes, of course, the world is watching closely, and we are also watching closely in Pakistan and bringing you updates. That's all from Game Changer tonight. Take care. Allah Hafiz.